Welcome to the videocast A Regenerative Future. This is a videocast where we dig deeper into the solutions on how we together can create a more regenerative world. We invite inspiring guests who all have in common that they act on the solutions for the future. So get ready to be inspired and get tons of concrete advice on how you can contribute. Today's inspiring guest is a guest I've been waiting to get on the show for a long time. He's a Danish philosopher, several times a best-selling author, and a founder and CEO of Voluntas, which is on a mission to make more lives more meaningful. And the time is finally here. Welcome, Morten Albæk. It's a true pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Chris, for inviting me. I've been looking forward to it, so thank you.
Great. And I really want to start with, because I've listened to both of your books, or the latest books, you have written a lot of them, One Life and what I would translate to the False Truths of Life. Can't you say me kind of where did your life shape you into really kind of having a fire for integrating one life and really taking another turn on leadership, how to run businesses and so on? What is the key defining moments in your life?
No, if I am to start with explaining why I started to go on a quest for meaning inside, of course, my own life, but also inside the discipline of leadership, it starts with my dad dying now soon 16 years ago, and he died when he was 64. When he died, I was close to being 32 or not far from, and that meant that
Yesterday.
If I was going to die, yes, exactly, yeah, I wish. But that meant that if I were going to die or leave this physical world at the same time as my dad, I had approximately half of my life left. And that made me wonder what I wanted to use the rest or the last half of my life on. So that's one thing. Then a second thing is that I, at his funeral, experienced something that I couldn't really, when I was in the midst of it, get my head and my heart and my body around, because I was exposed to a deep sorrow, deeper than any sorrow I've ever experienced earlier in my life. And one thing that was absolutely certain was that I was unhappy like hell, and it was a deeply dissatisfying moment to put my father in the grave together with my mom and my two brothers. But still, despite all the sorrow, despite all the dissatisfaction and unhappiness that I was surrounded by and that was running inside my body and mind, it was still feeling meaningful. Because while I was saddened, while I was in despair, full of sorrow, and I was crying, I was still reminded about all the privileges I'd been given and all the love that I'd received. And it made me believe that I would, on the other side of this sorrow, I was going to wake up to a life of hope and dignity. And actually from that moment on, due to these two experiences coming out of my dad's death, firstly, that we never ever know when life ends, and if it were to end sooner than I actually would like, and I only was going to be 64, how were I going to utilize my life, combined with the understanding of the difference between satisfaction, happiness, and meaning, put me on a journey that I'm still on. So that's the one thing I want to mention. And fundamentally, the more I then studied the difference between satisfaction, happiness, and meaning, the more it was crystal clear to me that we as a civilization, as a modern civilization in the Western world, had utterly confused ourselves in
Definitely.
What drives satisfaction, what creates happiness, and what constitutes meaning. And perhaps the fact that we don't really understand on an intellectual, emotional, and spiritual level the difference between satisfaction, happiness, and meaning is one of the reasons why we are living in the midst of what I define as one of the greatest paradoxes of our time. Namely that we've never been richer, never lived longer, never had more opportunities in life, never been better educated, while we at the same time have never ever been more lonely, more medicated, more stressed, more depressed, and more full of anxiety.
But if you're but if you look into that paradox, what's kind of your answer and the solution to that? Why are we not kind of happier, live more fulfilling and meaningful lives when we are living in the best countries basically in the world?
But that's because when you look at GDP growth and you look at the increase in materialistic consumption, what you are providing the foundation for when you're living in richness or in privileged physical and materialistic surroundings and context, what you are creating the foundation for is to fulfill your needs. And need realization and satisfaction is one and the same thing. So I would like an apple, I get an apple, I feel satisfied. I'm thirsty, I would like a glass of water, I get a glass of water, I feel satisfied. I would like a little pay increase, I get a little pay increase, I feel satisfied. I order a cab in Manhattan a Thursday afternoon and it comes at agreed time and I feel an aggressive satisfaction. But GDP growth, materialistic growth, is a catapult and a foundation for fulfilling your needs, and needs and fulfilling your needs generates a feeling of satisfaction inside the human body and mind. Now, what growth, economical privileges, as well as access to materialistic privileges, is also a contributor to the creation of happiness. Not only, but also a contributor to happiness. But happiness is something fundamentally different than satisfaction. Because where satisfaction is need realization, then happiness are the extraordinary moments in life, where life unfolds itself more poetically, more beautiful, more warm than normally. And one way of creating an extraordinary moment is to buy a trip to the Maldives, or to go for a bunker jump, or go on a backpacker trip when you have graduated from high school, or what do I know. So money actually plays a role in creating extraordinary moments that may provide a feeling of happiness. But when we need to understand, sorry, Chris.
No, if you track back a bit, I just wanted to kind of understand, because many people I meet say, yes, but you found meaning in that situation. But many people would take the other turn when their dad was dying and not find meaning in it, and maybe bury themselves, and years of kind of pondering that death. Why do you think you took the route of what I usually like to call kind of post-traumatic growth instead of stress and making it a burden in your life?
No, but I think that the answer to that is probably quite complicated. But if you were to find a simplistic answer to it, I think it's in the way that I was brought up and how my mind have been constructed through the life journey I've been on until that very moment. And perhaps due to my interest in existentialism and philosophy, intuitively, there were a turn that my brain and mind took in that moment that brought me to that acknowledgement of that it was actually a deeply meaningful moment to put my father in the grave. But I also think that we can help ourselves to find meaning in life by understanding A, what meaning is, and then also understanding B, the difference between the big meaning and the small meaning in life. So if we start with the first, what does it mean to feel meaning in life? It means that you stand in the now reflecting upon the life that you lived, with a prediction of the life that you expect is waiting for you. And then you're convinced that the life that is awaiting you, independently of what reflections you have of the life that you lived, that the life that is awaiting you is going to be a hopeful and dignifying life. Then a sense of meaning emerges inside the human mind and body. So first we start understanding the whole concept of what is meaning inside a human being. So that is when you stand in the now, predicting the life that's ahead of you, despite how difficult the moment before that moment have been, then you're convinced that the life that awaits you is a hopeful and dignifying life. Then
Beautiful.
the second is to understand the difference between how do we find meaning in life? How do we find hope and dignity in life? And there we need to differentiate between the concept of striving for, running for the big meaning in life, like the burning bush, saving the world, having a one-to-one encounter with God, or angels, or whoever it is. Which is, I have to say, a privilege that is one that is only given to very, very few individuals on the planet. So when I talk about finding meaning in life, I'm talking about finding the small meaning in life, not the big meaning in life, not the burning bush, not a direct relationship to God or to save humanity. I'm not saying that it's bad to try or to believe that you are experiencing, that you're saving the planet or humanity, or that you have a direct relationship to God. But what I'm saying is that for the vast majority of all of us, it's not going to happen. It's not going to materialize. We're not going to save the world. We're not going to save humanity. And we're not going to have a direct phone number to God or the metaphysical world. So therefore we need to find meaning in what I call the small, poetic dimensions of life, what is just in front of us. But it all starts with our ability to be in the now and not being occupied with the future and what we want of the future, but appreciating what we have in the now, that we're healthy, that we have a functional body, that we have friends, that we have family, that we have food on the table, that we have a job, that we are living, at least that goes for you and me, in two of the most amazing welfare systems that have ever been created, that we've been capable of taking education, and so on and so forth. The small meaning in life, to master that. But that also takes awareness. Awareness of both who you are and who you're not, and what is worthwhile striving for and what is actually needless to strive for if you want to live a meaningful life, a life of hope and dignity.
Cool. But one thing I'm thinking about, how do you differ then meaning in life and gratitude? Because it also sounds like I could write my gratitude journal with the same things like welfare system, job, and so on. So how do you differ those two?
No, but so gratitude, or the ability to be grateful, is a tool that enables you to feel meaning in life. So exactly as generosity is a tool to feel meaning in life, as well as the courage to express who you are, honestly is a tool to feel meaning in life. But if you're ungrateful, unwilling to actually let the world know who you are, and you're ungenerous, I promise you, you'll never ever find meaning.
Cool.
But we have
Makes
to
totally sense.
Yeah, sorry.
No, makes totally sense. And I was just like waiting for what's the others.
Yes. No, but it's also the concept of love. So if we how should I say, philosophically, practically agree that all human beings want to feel meaning in life. Now, what that feeling is hope and dignity. That you stand in the now and you're convinced that the life that's ahead of you is a life that will provide you with hope and dignity. Then there's certain means that needs to be in place to optimize your ability to find the small meaning in life that will always provide you with an overall feeling of meaning in life, namely that you're going to live a life primarily, if not all the time, with hope and dignity. And as I said, you have generosity, you have gratitude, you have the courage to be who you are, show the world who you are. But then there is also the whole concept of love. Because if you want to find meaning in life and if you want to live a life which is a dignifying life, you need to be capable of giving love without any expectation of having it returned. Because the only reason why you express your love is because you worthy your own feelings so much that you cannot hold it back. And that you have not made love into a transactional commodity where I give you my love if I have certainty that you give your love to me. If you commercialize love, your journey towards a dignifying life is going to be very, very long. And I believe that the whole concept of self-love is a false truth, that we need to love ourselves before we can love others. I believe that we need to worthy ourselves. We need to respect ourselves. We need to have a strong self-worth and a strong self-respect before we can give love without being scared of not having it returned. And self-love is not generous. Self-love is a closed circuit, whereas love is social and relational in its DNA.
And I know that you have, or it's been written a lot in media also. I think you talk about loving your employees as well. Yes. And some people like, no, you can't bring love into the workplace. And I also find it a bit kind of interesting. How can we be so generous with hate, with criticism, with the kind of violence or shutting people out, closing our doors, but like saying, I love you, we should only say to one person at a time in our life. What is your thought about bringing kind of love into leadership and into businesses?
No, but I think you have an extremely important point that I just want to support with a perspective that language creates reality. Language is a key contributor to creating the reality that we are capable of seeing. And if we only allowed, or primarily allowed, or it's only comme il faut, that we use language for criticism, for cynicism, for questioning, then that will influence the reality that we live in, the reality that we're capable of perceiving. Whereas when we use the language of love, with all its different connotations and attributes, it will influence the reality in which we live. So language creates reality, exactly as you are referring to. And therefore, it's absurd that people get so scared, so provoked, when I fundamentally say something quite, I believe, banal, that I want to have a loving relationship with my employees. But now the interesting thing comes. Why is it that we get so goddamn scared when somebody is saying, I want to love my employees? It's because we don't understand the history of love. We simply don't understand the many different categories of love. Because nearly the only type of love that we know of today is two. It is the erotical, romantic love, and then there's the love between family members, parents and kids, siblings, and so on and so forth. But if we travel back into ancient time, they had a much more rich design of love. They had many different categories of love. They had 4 dominating categories of love. They had the erotical love, so the type of love that we have to our, when we fall in love, to our boy or girlfriend, to our spouse, the romantic love, where we dream that we will stay together until the last breath, eros. Then they also had agape, and agape is the love for your fellow citizens, for your fellow human being, even though you've never ever met that person and will never ever meet that person. Then they had storge, which is the intuitive, instinctively love, which is best known from when parents first time experience the arrival of their child. Like suddenly you're capable of feeling a love so deep, so eternal that it surprises you, but it just comes to you instinctively, storge. But then they also had a fourth dominating category of love that was deemed equally important and as fine and as true as the three others I just mentioned, namely philia. And philia is a type of love that is not bound by blood, not storge, not bound by gods, meaning agape, not bound by physical attraction, meaning eros, but simply a type of love that can be between friends or colleagues if you share virtues and purpose in life. And the type of love that I want to share with my employees is not the erotical love. It is philia. And yes, I do believe that we should create a labor market where there's much more space for philia than what has been the case for the past, I don't know, either eternity or at least for the past 75 years since human resource management was established as a way of thinking about organizations and labor markets.
But how do you practically get around being more generous with your love and not wanting anything back? Like, how could it look like for people out there? Like, I'm so transactional, but I want to be more generous. Where do I start?
But you could, for me, it all starts with climbing what I call the ladder of self-respect. Because I believe that if you worthy yourself, if you respect yourself, you will not hold back on. Of course, you will have self-control, which means that you will act prudently and you will act elegantly and you will act civilized. But in the substance, if you have a high degree of self-worth, which is anchored in a strong self-awareness and a strong self-insight, you will express yourself. Now, that means that when you're not expressing yourself, when you're holding your love back, it's not that you don't have the language for it. It's not that you are cognitively challenged or it's an intellectual challenge that you have. It is simply a proof of that you do not respect yourself enough. And then you have to climb the ladder of self-respect. And the ladder of self-respect stands on the foundation of honesty and of all the virtues we can pick. And there's a lot of virtues out there. Courage, generosity, and so on and so forth. But for me, the absolutely most virtuous of all virtues is honesty. Because honesty, the ability to be as honest towards yourself, which is humanly possible, and primarily not only inviting people into your life that is honest towards you, is what provides you the opportunity, not the guarantee, but the opportunity of developing a healthy self-insight, meaning insight into what you can and what you can't, what you master and what you don't master, which is yet again the prerequisite for developing a healthy self-awareness, meaning that you're aware of who you are, who you never ever want to become, and who you can never become, which is yet again the prerequisite, now that you're actually aware of who you want to be, who you never want to become, and who you can never be, that you can actually start appreciating, worthying who you are as a human being, with all the defaults that you also carry, because you've also become aware of what you can't master, what you will never become. Then self-awareness is a prerequisite for self-worth, and a person that worthy him or herself for the human being that they are, independently of their performance or their positions, have the opportunity to develop self-respect. And a person that has a high degree of self-respect also have a tendency to show the same respect to others, their surroundings, everything living, as they're showing to themselves, exactly as a person that is disrespecting him or herself is showing the same disrespect to their surroundings, their fellow human beings, and everything alive. And there's nothing more disrespectful to yourself than not expressing what you feel.
Yeah. I think that's so I had the keynote at the Creative Bureau yesterday for 100 people, and then talking about starting with everybody talks about diversity and inclusion, but how can we include people who doesn't even know who they are?
Exactly.
Because then if you're not accepting yourself, you will be the police of other people getting into the same frame as you, and everybody should be standardized. But if you would accept yourself with all your kind of rainbow colors, you would care less about others being stringent to the norm and accept other people in the same way. And I think that's kind of what really stuck with me when I listened to One Life was that radical honesty. And I think it's quite cool now in Telia that I work at daytime. We got radical honesty into our values as a behavior, because what I see is that I meet people and they say, yes, I'm fine. But then the whole 85% of their communication is saying, I'm not at all. So we're constantly going around lying to ourselves, lying to others. And how can we create a better world when we don't even know where the world is today? Because we're all lying. So I think that resonated so much with me. But for people, and most people, at least in our region of the world, are quite shy of conflict. How do you start the journey to when you have lied to yourself for the whole life? How do you start suddenly to... It can hurt a bit, and it can be quite of a tough ride to start that journey.
Yes, it can. But if I just may, Chris, because you're touching upon something that is very dear to my heart, where you're saying that how can we create a world that is more diverse and inclusive if we don't have the self-worth and the self-respect to carry ourselves as we are? And furthermore, we should also know that one of the most common death regrets documented in the very, very rich science inside death regrets is that we regret when we're laying on the bed of death that we didn't, to a higher degree, live the life that we wanted to live, and we instead lived the lives that others expected of us. Another death regrets that is also common is that we did not allow ourselves to be more honest. So it's actually a very bad strategy not to be honest, climb the ladder of self-respect, and then actually live the life that you want to live, because you may be capable intellectually to convince yourself that it's a winning strategy, but when you're laying on the bed of death, then the soul and mind will tell you otherwise. But, so we have some challenges. We have like a challenge on diversity and inclusion. We have a challenge on climate change, combating climate change. Now, I don't believe that any of these two mega challenges are going to be solved via technology or via policies. They're going to be changed by increasing the amount of inhabitants, of humans on this planet that have a high degree of self-worth and self-respect. Because if we are capable as societies and as a civilization to come to a historical high in the amount of individuals that carry themselves with a high self-worth and self-respect, we will respect differences inside cultures, religions, sexualities, ideological positions much, much, much faster. And we will also show much more respect for anything living in nature and in environment. So for me, that is truly what the journey is about. It is to understand that in the end of the day, it is our ability to live lives with self-worth and self-respect that will also provide a more tolerant world and an environment and a biodiversity that is not being degraded but actually protected and strengthened. So I just wanted to say that you want to something there that is very, very important preach or to discuss. So I
Yeah.
support you wholeheartedly in that.
Cool. And my solution became moving to a place like I'm living now, at Tøyen, in the poorest part of town, where 51 different nations meet, different levels of society, because I find that everybody is trying to fit in. Instead of finding a place where nobody fits in, that's where everybody fits in. So the first time I felt like I can't be like anybody of the neighbors. I can just be more myself. So maybe that's a trick as well. Move to a place where nobody is the same. Then you just need to be more yourself. If you have one last kind of life advice to the listeners out there, to really make sure that they live more thriving lives, but also contributing to the others around them, what would be that one advice?
It would be, if I may come with two, which
You can come with two.
are combined, even though that is very greedy of me to come with two when I'm only asked for one. But I think that the first advice is that if you are not today capable of stringently, logically, and shortly to answer what is the meaning of your life, then be aware of that it's not because you intellectually, emotionally, socially don't have the capabilities to answer that question as swiftly, as shortly, as stringently and logically as you can answer any other question that you are asked. It's simply because you are not on a daily basis in connection with that question. And it is the most important question of all questions to have a clear answer on every day. Not to say that the answer will always be the same, because what the meaning of life is for you is firstly subjectively, and it belongs to you. Secondly, it will change as life goes on, a journey with you, when you suddenly are exposed to deep love, extreme sorrow, disappointment. But having an awareness of that question is the most important of all is where it all begins. And then secondly, we need to accept that we become who we are together with. So we need to be honest with ourselves about whether we are surrounded with people that are both loving and honest towards us, whether we're surrounded with people that will actually help us up the ladder of self-respect, strengthening our self-insight, helping us to self-awareness so we can take the last two steps towards self-worth and self-respect on our own. But we need human beings around us that show us love through their honesty and not through a half-truth or compliments that are not worthwhile the sound that they're given with.
Good, but then I need to ask one short more question, and that's, what's your meaning in life, Morten?
Now, as I said, my meaning in life have not been the same all the time at all, because it changed as I experienced becoming a parent and experiencing losing your loved ones and so on and so forth. But today my meaning of life is to live every day in such a manner that it is easy for those people which love I cannot live without to love me tomorrow.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think that's marking a great end of our show today. Thank you so much for joining us, Morten. Really a pleasure to talk to you, and I could listen to you for hours. Thank you.
So grateful to be invited and talk to you, Chris. Really enjoyed it. All the best. Lots of love.
Thank you, and thank you to all the listeners out there to the videocast Regenerative Future, where we invite inspiring guests who all have in common that they act to create a more thriving world for all of us. So until next time, see you and goodbye.